Okay, ABT Lockdown Live viewers, we have a new segment here. It's called an ABT Classic Event, where we go back through the record books and look at some of the real pivotal events in ABT history. They might be Brim, they might be Bass, they might be Barra. We're starting off this week with Garry Fitzgerald, who won the Bass Electric Convention in 2005. Now, it was on Wivenhoe Dam. And you know what? I'm not going to steal Fitzy's thunder, mate. I'm going to let you tell us exactly how you won this event. Now, I'm going to set the scene by saying it had 75 anglers in it. They qualified from 23 qualifying events in 3 different states, in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. And the winning weight over 3 fish was nearly 8 kilos, mate. So run us through the story of how you won this ABT Classic event.
Well, I'd just been on a charter run up through North Queensland, catching barra and stuff up there. And I was on my way home, and as I commonly did, I've just gone, you know what, I can't resist pulling into Barumba to pull the fly rod out and chase a few toga on my way south. After I'd been on 10 days fishing charter, had to go fishing again. So that was the morning, and then the afternoon I went, you know what, stuff it, I'm not even going to go home. I'm just going to go straight to the lake for a pre-fish. And I went through, I only had barra rods. Everything I think was like 30-pound braid and heavy leaders, but I went out and had a quick run, and the only thing that I had with me that I could probably use was some tuna slugs. So I'd been out a few weeks earlier and seen a couple of fish out there, so I had a pretty good idea where there were some decent ones, and went out and really first cast, just banged a big long cast out, let it sink to the bottom, about 35 feet from memory. And I was on first cast, so I only had half a dozen casts, and I thought, right, I'll leave them alone, and I'll be back when the comp starts. So did that, and really I didn't change. Went home, showed up, and back in those days, you know, there was none of the you know, the fantastic, you know, vehicles, you know, the boats that we see on the water these days. You know, it was all tinnies. It really was, yeah. You know. And one of the things that I always remember in some of those comps is you get 2 anglers in a tinny with maybe always an electric on the front, maybe another one on the back, but they're all both standing right up the bow, nearly water coming over the front of the boat to get that extra 0.2 of a kilometre per hour. So, yeah. But, yeah, so, you know, I teamed up with Dale Sinclair in his tinny. I think in those days in the Bass Electrics, you could pick your partner. And I think we teamed up. We just said we're going to share our batteries because we had about an 8-kilometre run by electric to get to where the fish were.
Yeah, it said in the report that it took you an hour and a half each way to get to the fish, and we ran it out of Logan Inlet, but you actually fished over near Billy's Bay where we run it now. And back in those days, I think that was obviously pre-2011 and 2013 flood. So the stocking group had been punching bass in there for a while, and they were growing to this big size, and it's nearly like it was today. You know, that lake's been dropping nowadays for several years. Back then it had been dropping for maybe nearly 10 years, and the fish were schooled up and they were fat as houses, weren't they?
Oh yeah, absolute horses, you know, and they hadn't seen a lot of fishing pressure, so they were a bit dumb, but anyway, it's great fishing if you can get it. You know, it's probably some of the best bass fishing I've ever had's been out on Wivenhoe.
So, Fitzy, one of the things I'm really interested about in this classic event were some of the baits that you did have on board. You know, the bass lures we throw nowadays are a little bit different from some that you threw back then. Take us through the selection of what you've dug out of that archive box.
Well, I look at the arsenal that anglers have got these days, and they're just so much better than we ever had in the past. You know, I can remember Lee Boylo. I don't know if you can see that one, Steve. Yeah. That was one of the old blades, you know, that came in just after the cicadas that were kicking around back in Rod Harrison's day, you know. So that was locally made, and that was they used to get put together there in Ipswich. That was, you know, they worked as good as anything, I guess, but, you know, they just finished off so much better these days. You know, the old school, I remember you and someone years ago at one of the one lure comps, I think you were fishing with some spoons. You know, you were pioneering some of that with the bass stuff. But
I wonder what the old was.
Yeah. So, you know, one of my old favourites, you know, in those days was, you know, just the old Raiders.
And that was the one that you won that tournament on, wasn't it?
Yeah. One actually, one of the ones I used in that tournament. Actually, only probably had about 20 casts for the whole comp and caught, about 10 fish day one and 5 fish day two and just stopped fishing.
Yeah.
So, but some of the other old things that were kicking around, just going through an old box is, an old Tassie Devil. How many people fed them down to a bass and had them swallow them, So they certainly, they worked back then and they still work now. Now it's all, my go-tos, something like these guys, the heavier in those, and they just, the bass just swallow them. They're like lollies, So
yeah, it is. It was back in the day. We had to make do with was a bit of grab something from the tuna aisle or something from a pelagic aisle and use it for the bass because there wasn't specialised stuff for it, I suppose, back in the time.
No, there wasn't. And the trends in those days, it was guys like, Hank and Tomo, they were, and Scoey and the deep fly and, back when I won that Wivenhoe Electric convention, I think the deep fly had been and gone and was coming back again. And, guys like Gav were just, killing fish on that. I remember there actually at that electric comp, there was Obi-Wan and there was Gav and they were all taking bets and everyone followed them guys. And I thought, you beauty. So I kind of had like 400 acres to myself. But different story on day two, I can tell you though. But, and it was all Harry, the jackals weren't long out and they were just killing everything, What a difference those lures made to the market, And, I was on a tight budget, couldn't afford any, but, it was just make do with what I had. And,
it worked out good, mate.
Yeah. So, I was going through, we're having a chat on the phone earlier and I pulled out an old box looking for some of those slugs and I'm just going through and I'm going, holy cow. I've still got like a dozen of Tomo's tail spinners there as well. That box hasn't seen daylight in, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, mate, it was a great time. And I saw, when I was reading the write-up from this event, you won yourself a guest battery charger and a Motor Guide electric at that event, mate. So it was good to, in those days, it was a $20 entry fee for the qualifying events and it might have been $100 or something for the grand final, mate. So for me, back then it was a great way of anglers recontributing back to the sport while giving some money to stocking. Nowadays it's evolved to guys like Joey Urquhart running a much more compact series with higher profile events, higher entry fee, higher prize money, a bit better coverage. But I don't think we're ever going to go back to the days where we see 23 qualifying events for a series.
No. They were pretty hectic in those days. But, it was the pioneer of what we've got today, and a great breeding ground. Some of the skill set of the anglers these days, I wouldn't even dream about going up against them and being able to compete. They're just another class level. And I guess you probably see that year in, year out. They just get better all the time, Yeah.
You had your 2 out of 2 bag on day one went 5.09 kilos for 2 fish, mind you. And then the way the electric convention worked is the first day it was a 2 fish bag. Second day it was a 1 fish bag where you brought in a lazy 2.73 kilo fish. Dave Hislop actually knocked you off by 40 or 50 grams for the big fish of the day. But the other parts of the Bass Electric convention were a trivia quiz and a casting competition. And I know you're always pretty good at casting, even though Trev Stead actually knocked you off. Overall, you won the overall trophy. We always tried to have it as not just as a fishing comp, the electric convention. It was fishing and knowledge and casting and a bit of you had to be a world fisherman to do it. So you won that. I know nowadays that it's changed a little bit, and this is a bit of a segue into what we want to talk to down the track. Back in those days, we were able to run 23 events because anglers themselves would get a kit from ABT. We'd run an event. There was bugger all permit fees from SEQ Water or any of these joints. And so from the event, we'd give the angler some entry credits. We'd give the anglers would get some prize money. The stocking group would get a bit of a donation, and the whole thing would work. Now, that whole system for us, it fell over when all of a sudden the authorities running the lakes multiplied their permit fees by 10 times, So it went from like $30 or $40 to a permit to $250 for a permit. And it really sucked because at that point, the stocking donations had come down to fit it because old mate running the tournament we needed to look after him a little bit to actually do it. And only recently, just last year, they've multiplied it by nearly another tenfold again. So the permit fees went from like $30 or $40 to $250. And now if I wanted to, I could spend over $1,000 on a permit to run an event, mate. I know your history is in fish stocking. It must be frustrating for a fish stocking group to have the lake authority essentially take that money out of the stocking group's pockets and put it into theirs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'm not backward in being forward and saying I personally think that some of these fees and permits and etc., they're just put there to make it hard for people.
Yeah.
They just, you know, they want to make it your decision not to go, not their decision. So
Yeah.
they just make it hard and people just stay away. While at the same time, you know, ABT has been fantastic. I don't know how long ago it was, Steve. You know, back in the early days, I was having a chat to you about it, and you know what I'm like. I defend the work that fishery stocking do, and I'm pretty vocal about it as well. But there was all these other copycat comps, you know, cardboard comps popping up all over the place. And you know what? ABT always, from the get-go, always gave a donation back to the stocking groups, and some of the others that are still running today, they just fly under the radar. They just flip the bird to everyone and say, you know what, we're doing what we want to do and screw yous all.
Yeah.
You know? And I see ABT investing in their own fishery. It's not our fishery. Yeah, I defend it. You know, it's just because even with the SIP these days, we still don't have enough money to restock these lakes to what their potential is.
Yeah.
And particularly back in those days, it was all chook raffles and art unions and donations, and you know, we used to fight for every cent we could get to get these fisheries off the ground.
Yeah, I remember in the early days when we started the bass tournaments in 1999, I soon worked out that the stocking groups were very possessive about their fish in the lake, and I could either do one of two things. One would be do this and say bad luck once they go in the water, the community property, or we could work with the stocking groups, because the SIP itself didn't come in for nearly 10 years after we started running tournaments. And I was just going through some old footage the other day. In the first few years of operation, those stocking checks, every event, were $2,000 per event. And we worked out that would put something like 10,000 bass into the lake. So we weren't stupid. It was great PR for us to do it. But two, 10,000 bass every time we go to a lake, with basically, you know, not many coming out via mortality, was smart business for us. So I saw it as a great partnership between the stocking groups and ABT to create a fishery that still exists today. I guarantee that bass that we with the stocking via the fish stocking groups are getting caught now at 50 centimetres long. So it's good to see the fruits of the effort. And I'm not a member of any stocking group in particular. We donate to lots of them. But I can understand the feeling that you guys get by planting the seeds and then a decade later seeing the rewards for your work.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realise those horse, you know, those 50 centimetre plus bass, they're all, even in those lakes where we get really good growth rates like Wivenhoe, Somerset and Samson Vale, they're 10-year-old plus fish.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a long time to get that return on investment. It really is.
Yeah. Mate, and look, we really appreciate, like you and all the stocking groups we work with over the years, we appreciate the work that you do into it. We love the fact that members of the stocking group are actually fishing the events as well. There's no greater sign that we get a tick of approval from the stocking groups, of the guys that are in the stocking groups are coming and enjoying the fishery as well. And back in the day, I don't know if many people remember, but one of the main fundraisers for stocking groups was to actually run a tournament of their own. I remember you had the old Kirkley Classic. I think that was the stocking group's one. And there is a lot of effort in doing the Kirkley Classic. You know, I used to love the stocking group members coming along, be it Somerset or Boondooma or wherever, and coming and enjoying fishing a tournament without having to pull the tents down at the end of the day.
Yeah. A lot of work went into those, and it really was the old Kirkley Classic that made the likes of Lake Somerset the fishery that it is today. Since then, it's just been top up, you know. So, yeah, the SIP definitely puts more money in, but those fisheries, that's how they got off the ground.
No, agree, mate. Look, really appreciate you joining us today for the classic event. Just before we go, I know we've both you and I and Nicole have had a history with the lure show in the last few years, and we've pulled out an issue. You're the lure show man again. Tell us where we're at with the lure show. I know a lot of people watching this love going to that thing and just, you know, spend the money, get the lures. It's obviously COVID related, on pause at the moment. What's the update?
Yeah, look, Steve, you know, what you and Nicole have done for that Lure Expo is phenomenal over the last few years. This year, the plan was to move back to its roots, back to Ipswich, and we were going to a new venue, the Railway Workshop Museum at North Ipswich. So that was the plan. It was all kind of agreed to, and of course, COVID-19's hit. So we're kind of on hold at the moment. We were going to run just after the after trade show. But at the moment, it's just going to be wait and see. We don't know when. Nobody knows when all the restrictions are going to end. So you know what? If we don't run it later in 2020, we'll run it winter time 2021. Yeah. Without a doubt.
It's in the same holding pattern as all ABT events, mate. We're waiting till running an event is actually the right thing to do again. It's, there'll probably be a point in the future where we are allowed to run the event, but is it the best time to run the event? We don't know, mate. So we'll keep you posted there. We're going to have down here, there's all the Facebook page for the Lewis Show. Keep an eye on that for updates, mate. And thank you for joining us on ABT Lockdown Live, Fitzy.
Always a pleasure, Steve.